the party in power, you have half the chamber generally rising and applauding, and the other half kind of sitting on their hands. I think the president basically reiterated what he discussed during the campaign, which was obviously make America great again. They talked about immigration, trying to bring in line the cost of living, trying to improve things, and of course, government waste. So I think it was more about America first, and the president reinforcing what his agenda is. So I think he just continued to carry the message from his campaign.
Now, he spoke about the renewal of the American dream, as you mentioned, by also, given the downsizing of federal workers and winding up of some of the government agencies, somehow has kind of, divided what Americans in terms of how they're looking at what's their future like. How should the American people interpret this renewal of the American dream?
Yeah. I think most people outside the Beltway, outside of Washington, when they come home from work, they look at their check and they go, how much did the government take from me? So I think in terms of cutting down the government workforce, I don't think there's a lot of sympathy outside of Washington. I think people are sensitive. Obviously, if you're a government worker, it definitely impacts you. But I think most people outside of the Beltway, it's kind of a secondary issue for them, really, in terms of downsizing government. They're more concerned about price of eggs, price of gas, immigration issues. So I think that's the big issue there in terms of downsizing the government. And of course, I think making government more efficient. I don't think anyone really would complain about that.
Now, a lot of people watching Africa 54, they are like, what is in Trump's administration for the continent? What is the engagement of Trump with the continent of Africa likely to look like?
Yeah, I was just with some people at the White House yesterday who work on Africa, and the verbiage or the language was, it's deals and deterrence. So deals, obviously, meaning how can the U.S. do more business in Africa? How can we have more transactions? And deterrence is more related to security. I think the U.S. wants to find a way where Africa can be more stable without these massive, expensive UN peacekeeping operations. So it's basically, as I was told to me, it's deals and deterrence. And the president's looking on how U.S. companies can really be at the epicenter of doing business in Africa.
What would you say, this congressional address, that was the first one, at least now during his second term, points to when it comes to foreign policy?
Look, the State of the Union by the president was actually one of the longest ones. I think it was an hour and 40 minutes. And he touched on everything. Obviously, look, he said things about Lesotho. There were some things that may have been said that maybe outside of the U.S. may be perceived as insensitive, but in the U.S., because of the domestic nature of his agenda, I think a lot of his base would be on board with it. So, and as you know, there was reference to Uganda, Zambia, I think Liberia. There were references to monies being spent. So I think there's going to be, in terms of U.S. foreign assistance, it will be definitely revisited as to how can we not only provide efficiency, but I think also there's going to be an expectation by these governments to be also accountable.